So in this demonstration today, I'm going to show you how you can finish your coil piece, or at least begin the finishing process. Now, I only made one project for my demonstration, and I left the look of the coil. But I'm going to kind of divide the pot into two parts. So if you imagine like this is one part of the pot that's going to stay, and then on the other side of the pot, I'm going to be blending those areas together so you can see how to smooth out coils if you don't want them to show. So I'm going to start with the part first where I'm going to blend out my coils. Now, as you know, I couldn't build all in one day because my clay was getting way too soft. So now that it's been in the bag for several days, I haven't added any extra water to it. I can still kind of move it, but it's mostly what's considered leather hard. So like I said, I'm dividing my pot into two examples. So I'm going to show you how to clean up the coils on one side and how to remove the coils on the other side. Now that's probably not going to make sense for your pottery piece to do it like that, but it is possible for you to have smooth areas and coiled areas to show. So you could do those together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my serrated metal rib. And this is one reason why the thickness of your coils was really important, that you wanted it to be at least the thickness of your pinky. So I'm just going to start at an angle, and I'm just going to pull. And I am removing a little bit of clay, and you definitely can see the textured teeth marks. But I want to pull at an angle. Then I'm going to come in with my smooth metal rib. So I'll bring this a little closer so you can see there's all this roughness, but the teeth marks are getting that clay to blend back and forth. So then I'm going to take my rib and I'm going to smooth around this way. So as I smooth around this way, I'm also still removing some of that clay. That's okay as long as you're doing a little bit at a time. So you can still see right here, there's a coil line, but if I rotate it this way, where I took the serrated metal rib and was crisscrossing, that's smooth. So I'm going to continue to do that. Now remember, I'm not going to be smoothing my whole piece out because I'm going to use part of this coil piece to show you how to clean up your coils. But I'm crisscrossing. That's kind of roughing up that surface. Then I come back with my metal rib. Now we started with 3 pounds of clay. There's absolutely positively no way that your coil pot will ever weigh 3 pounds. The only time that it might is once you've used all your clay. But as it begins to dry, it loses moisture, so then it will lose water weight. As it's fired, it will also lose some weight because it shrinks in the firing. So don't worry about these little crumbles that I'm getting to fall off of the pot. That's not important. So you can see that before I had the balls of clay and then the spiral. Well, because on this side of the pot, I'm just going to show you how to smooth all of that out. I'm going to keep working downward. And so I'm actually going to flip it upside down. It's strong enough to support its own weight. And then I'm just going to pull. I want to go over my coils. So this is a super easy way, but your clay has to be a good moisture content. If your clay is too dry, this process of sort of going back and forth like that or at an angle isn't going to work too easily for you. So there are some other things that you can do, but hopefully you can see it's not clean, but there's no coil showing, and I still have coils showing over here. So I'm going to show you that you can also use your wood tool. So I'm going to use the back rounded part of this wood tool, and I'm going to pull down. So I have to use some pressure. I don't want to press so hard that I deform my coil piece, but I have to use some pressure to get those coils to blend out. And then again, I'm going to take my metal rib and I'm going to smooth around the outside. So remember, those 3 pounds are only important because that was your starting weight. You do not have to add on extra clay because you're doing a little bit of scraping and removing some clay that way. You do need to be careful, however, that you don't remove too much clay and that your pot becomes too thin. Again, that's why that coil thickness was super important. So I said I was going to go about halfway. I'm about halfway here, but not quite. So I'm going to pull down. And my clay has been sitting simply in a bag with no extra water for almost a week, actually. And I'm going to flip it back upright because I want to blend this area out. So sometimes you have to support it. And instead of pulling down, I can also pull upward. But then I need to come back with that metal rib that's smooth, that doesn't have the serrated teeth, and remove that excess clay. So I have lots of crumblies, but I'm just kind of looking right now to see if there's any coil lines showing, because if there's lines of coils, I can almost guarantee you there's going to be a crack. Now, like I said, I'm going to go about halfway, but I don't want to get rid of this area because I want to show you how you can clean up your coils in that spot. So here I have a mostly smooth side. The coils aren't showing anymore. You can use your fettling knife to trim away that top if you need to. So since that's no longer a spiral, and I can level my top off. So I'm getting a little bit of a crack here. A good solution if you're having a little bit of cracking to occur would be is to use your needle tool or serrated metal rib and score it and slip it back together. So I'm going to use that rib, score, take some of my slip, put it in there, and press it back together nice and tight. So that's going to help prevent any cracking to further go down. And then you would use like your sponge to round your top edge. Okay, but here's a smooth surface. Now I have a shortage of rubber ribs, so I don't have a rubber rib that I can personally use today, but to get rid of the rest of your tool marks, the rubber rib, just kind of glide that right over your pot, is going to work really, really well. You could also do the wood tool. So if I have the slant, I can go around and I can clean some of that area up with my wood tool. But the rubber rib, honestly, is going to work better because it's going to get a lot of those crumbles. And if anything, you can simply use your fingers. That's going to help smooth that surface out too. Now, a lot of times kids ask, well, what about the inside? The inside doesn't necessarily have to be perfect, but if you can see into the inside, it's a good idea to have it pretty well blended and smooth. So this is just half of the pot where I said I was going to show you how to blend the coils out. And then on the other side, I'm going to clean up the look of my coils. So I'm going to use my wood tool, but this time I'm going to use the wood tool that has this rounded back to it and a little bit of a point. And then if you are in the studio, I have rubber tip tools, and they have different ends to those tools that are very flexible, and they work really, really well to help you blend your coils. They are a community item, so either you need to sanitize your hands prior to using them and sanitize afterwards. You can wear a pair of disposable gloves, or you can hand sanitize, use them, sanitize the tools before you put them back. But they're really, really awesome when it comes to blending those coils. So I'm going to try to just sort of tilt this so that you can see a little bit better, but I can still see. So what I can use the rubber tip tool for, first of all, is defining my coils. And any little crumblies that kind of, I can pull them out a little bit, or if I don't pull them out, I can always wait until this is bone dry and do some gentle sanding. But this helps to define the look of the coil. So I'm kind of just following around where the coils are, and you might have to work back and forth a little bit. You might do one area and then come back and do more of it. So I can come in here, and it's basically just like I'm drawing into the surface. And that's just to help define my coils. I haven't necessarily smoothed them tremendously, but this rubber tip tool helps to make sure that they're blended. And if you're getting some crumblies, sometimes you can just take your finger and you can kind of wipe those crumblies off. And sometimes you have to work back and forth, where you're going to use the tool, pull off a crumbly, wipe it on the table, pull off a little crumb. And then you're just going to kind of keep following around your coils. So this is just defining them. You're probably going to get some little clay crumblies to pop up. You could also use that wood tool to do the same thing. So if you don't want to use the rubber tip tool, you have a wood tool that should work quite well. And so I'm just defining those coils, and I can use my finger and just smooth over the top. But I want to get rid of crackles. That's going to make the glazing process more difficult. Also, if you have crackles, you have the potential to get a crack in that area. But I'm not adding water. I'm simply using the tools and my fingers. And that's because my clay is leather hard, but it's not a really dry leather hard. It's still somewhat wet. But it is more set up today than it was when I first started the demonstration for the coil piece. So I'm just kind of smoothing. And this is going to take a little bit of time. So don't try to rush it too much. And I just kind of go back and smooth those areas back and forth. You can use a damp sponge, but it's not necessary to use the damp sponge. I think sometimes, unless your clay is very dry, if you add too much water, it's going to take it a lot longer to set up so that it can support itself so you can keep building. So there's really no need to add extra moisture unless for some reason your clay feels incredibly dry. So I'm going to get some of these crumbles out. And if I don't get them all out, that's not a big deal, because I'll just sand the piece when it's bone dry. And I'm just going to kind of go around, pull this area, pull that area, smooth. And just kind of keep working. So I like the rubber tip tool, but the wood tool is working just fine. So you're welcome to use that. The rubber tip tools also have different ends. So this one has kind of a slant to it. So if I use that slant, I can define the edge of the coil, but then I can also smooth the coil at the same time. So that's really going to make that coil look defined. It is possible to have coil showing and to have smooth areas on your pot. But remember that just for this demonstration, I smoothed one half of my pot, and then I'm trying to get the coils to show on the other side. But you can mix it up where part of it shows, part of it doesn't. So I'm doing a lot of the smoothing simply with my finger and using those tools. So hopefully you can see that these lower coils are starting to look a little bit better than the top coils. I haven't really done anything with these yet. So I'm going to rotate it a little bit more towards me so I can see. So you can see half of my smooth side over here and then my coil side. And if I do that slant, I can come back with my finger, and then that cleaned it up really, really fast. Just don't rely on water. At the very end, you'll be able to use a sponge maybe to remove any tool marks that are still there. But I don't want you to add a whole lot more water if you're going to continue to build. It's better to do some of this smoothing as you go. So if you want it smooth on the outside, once your clay is a little bit stronger, you can start smoothing the outside. If you want the coils to show, you can kind of keep building and going until you feel like you're done with that part. And then you can go and do this, which is the smoothing, cleaning it up. And this isn't going to look perfect today because my clay is still pretty soft. Still leather hard, but still pretty soft. So if I have areas where there's little divots or on smooth parts, I can use the rubber tip tool as well to blend over that. Or my fingers. So I'm going to continue to work on this piece until everything is pretty well smooth. And so I'm going to pause for a moment and do a little bit more finish work, and then I'll show you what it looks like once I'm done with that.